Thank you to Mary Kate and Jarrett for inviting me to do this. My role at Rensselaer is, my title is called the Dean of the Graduate Student Experience, but I don't really consider myself a dean. I'm more of like a coordinator, helper, slash advisor. Rensselaer has a model where there's undergraduate class deans. And so the role that I fulfill is being a class dean for graduate students. I'm in the portfolio of student success, which is in the division of student life. So thank you. I'm here to talk about graduate school's hidden curriculum. And let me just see if this is gonna work. All right. So today we're gonna go over what exactly do I mean by the hidden curriculum. And then there's 5 aspects that we're gonna touch base on. One is choosing a graduate program, support services, building a network of mentors, staying on track, academic jargon, and then we'll have time for some questions. One of the things that I do in my role as Dean of the Grad Experience is work with graduate students to have some programs, whether they're social or professional development. I started this job in August 2015. I'm the first person to have the role. And this is one of our first trips that we did. We took a hike. And so it's just a good opportunity for graduate students to come together from different disciplines, meet one another. I think that's important in a graduate program. So, if that's important to you, that's something that we do here at Rensselaer. Even right now, virtually, we create opportunities for students to meet one another. What I do want to say, though, is aspects of the hidden curriculum. There's much more than what we're discussing today. So this is really just a snapshot. And so you probably will have more questions. You might think of more thoughts, or maybe not. But just want you to know it's not everything. So what do I mean by the hidden curriculum? So Dr. Jessica McCrory Calarco, I think, really took the initiative to put it all into a book. I am not getting paid royalties, but I highly recommend this book, A Field Guide to Grad School, Uncovering the Hidden Curriculum. A lot of what I'm covering today kind of takes from her book with some kind of other thoughts and ideas from other places, but really, Dr. Calarco studies inequalities in education, and based on her own experience as a sociology PhD student, being a mentor and advisor to grads, she really thought it was important to put together what are we talking about when we say the hidden curriculum. So do we have people on the phone? I want to be able to read it if we don't. Anyone calling in? Do we know? Okay, no one's calling in. Okay, I'll still read it though. So the hidden curriculum of grad school stays hidden in part because it's taken for granted. Unlike the formal curriculum, which tends to focus on ways of thinking, the hidden curriculum tends to involve ways of doing. How to do, write about, and talk about research, how to navigate complex bureaucracies, and how to ask others for help when you feel lost. And I think that's really important because when we think about the hidden curriculum, we don't really, there's hidden curriculums at all levels, but this is something that you have to kind of find for yourself, which is definitely a lot. Whoops, sorry about that. So she started the conversation really on Twitter. This is one of the first, and I'll mention Twitter quite a bit throughout this presentation, and that's on purpose. I think that what I have found is that there are a lot of academics, researchers, faculty, other graduate students who really want to help incoming graduate students, prospective graduate students, current graduate students. And so I have found Twitter to be a place where you can really find more about what we mean when you say hidden curriculum. And so as you can see, this first text here, or I'm sorry, tweet in 2018, she's responding to this person who says, just told an undergrad about grad assistantship, stipends, and tuition waivers. Her mind was blown. We need to do better. And Dr. Calarco said, well, it's not just hidden for undergrads, it's hidden for grads too. And then she, I believe when you get the slides here, you'll be able to click on that and you can go right to that, all those tweets. Same with Matt Hauer, so he has a startup document of resources he wish he had. And again, he has 12 different resources that he thinks are important for new or current graduate students. This is something that a graduate student wrote in a quick article in Science. Basically, this grad student felt like didn't know what was going on, didn't know what she was supposed to ask. And so it's a very quick read. Again, you'll have this at the end to go back. You'll have it in the references. But so she says, examples include knowing when it is appropriate to ask for mentorship, understanding research funding structures, and being familiar. Oh, that looks like it's a weird, okay. Understanding with standard language used in academic syllabi, such as office hours. If you know these things, you barely notice them. If you don't, they're completely bewildering. They usually aren't formally taught or explained, so it's up to us to figure them out one way or another. And sorry, there must have been something I deleted in there. But really it's, how do you figure it out? So this is something I present to new graduate students at our academic orientation at the beginning of each semester. And I share it with all of you because I think this really captures, the hidden curriculum and what we perceive as the hidden curriculum. To other people, they might think that, the top part, success. If you're in graduate school, this is what it is. You might even compare yourself to other graduate students and say, they are successful. They're in grad school, but really grad school is underneath the iceberg and really includes all of these difficult, kind of moments of persistence, failure, sacrifice. You're going to be disappointed. You need discipline, hard work, dedication, and people don't see that. And part of the reason why they don't see it is because we don't talk about it enough. And so part of, uncovering the hidden curriculum is discussing that these things are real and that's what gets you to the success. So how do you know if you're choosing the right graduate program? So just, to think about it from, the very top of the funnel, what are your career and professional goals? Why do you want a particular degree? Are you going because you want to or because you think you have to? Are you going in hopes of getting a particular career? What kind of career do you need for that degree? Are you encouraged to have an internship as part of it? Really, a lot of this can be fleshed out in personal statements, which I'm sure some of you are writing or have already written, and thinking about how are you addressing what you're interested in grad school? What are you going to do in order to be successful in graduate school? Why is that program a good fit for you? We're not going to talk a lot about applications, but one thing I will say is that take your time writing your personal statement. You want to be able to look back at that when you're in grad school to say, that is why I'm here. As a reminder to yourself, I highly discourage you to write the same personal statement and change the institute and the graduate program in each one. It's really important to personalize it. How do you see yourself in that particular degree, and how do your career and professional goals align? The next part is about degree programs. And so understanding that there's a difference between master's and doctoral degrees, knowing that there's a difference in duration. Some of you may be interested in a master's program, some a PhD program. Some may be thinking, I want to get a master's degree now, and then think about getting a PhD later. How long does it take? How many years will it take? And then considering that, what does funding look like? How will you fund this degree? Are there opportunities for assistantships? Typically at the master's level, it's less likely to have full funding. I'm sure some of you might have heard that, or even partial funding, but are there campus jobs that you might be eligible for? When you're thinking about funding for graduate student or for PhDs, what does that look like? Where are the funding sources coming from? Are there a limited number of semesters in which you receive funding? Is there a difference between teaching assistantships and research assistantships? And how do you get those different assistantships? Then we think more about status and status considerations. So yes, I mean, program rankings do sometimes matter, but that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. Sometimes a degree from a particular institution might get you the interview or open up a door for you, but is that important for you? It's okay if it is, but how do you fit within that overall program? Does status matter to you? How do they talk about your graduate program? I encourage you to look at the media sites at different institutions and see what do they say about what's happening in terms of research on that in that institute. Do they feature graduate students? What is the most important? Kind of getting a sense of what is the culture of this institute and what they care about. Next, which I think is probably one of the most important, at least for me, is the people in the program. How do you have a good sense of who the people are in each program? Are they accessible? Are they accessible to you? Are they available to you when you're applying? When let's say you're accepted, are they available for you to talk with them? When you're looking for advisors or you want to get to know different faculty or staff, grad students, how do you know what they're like, right? What questions do you ask? And that we'll get into that in a little bit. Are they familiar with one another in the program? Are they familiar with what resources and opportunities are available beyond the program? Do they know who to refer you to? You can learn a lot about faculty and grad students through their websites. One thing I do caution you is that some websites are not always up to date. So what might be on the institute website, and it might say the faculty member and what their research areas are. Make sure that is that the most accurate? Is that is that what they're currently working on? I encourage you to look at their CVs. What's the most recent research topic they are looking at? Does it align? Then we have location. Does this matter to you? Does the weather matter? What's going on in that particular area? Can you get a sense of what's going on in that area? Where do most of the graduate students live? Do they own cars? Do they walk? Is there a particular type of food that you can't live without? And are there restaurants available? Are there grocery stores available that offer that food? What are the restaurants like? Are there options for food on campus? Are there services and community programs that you might be interested in? Cost of living is definitely something to consider. Selectivity. This is where, there's you might say, okay, I want to supply, this is my dream grad program. So you might want to split up your programs that you're interested into. What is the slim chance you might get in? What's a decent chance you might get accepted? And what do you have a very good chance getting accepted? And kind of looking at all of those together. Then we think about work-life balance. Can you get a sense of how grads manage their time? Really, like I said, go beyond what the website and the brochures show you. Look at their social media. See if you can find, the graduate programs, the lab. What are they saying on social media? Are they active on Instagram? What events are offered? Are there competitions, hackathons, opportunities to connect with graduate students beyond the graduate program? What activities are available for grad students? Is that important to you? As you're thinking about all of these considerations, really, how do you track all of it? I think it's best to keep a spreadsheet or some sort of system in place where you can compare and contrast, different aspects of different programs. Okay, so these are some example questions you might ask. Again, they're not the only questions. I think it's also a really good idea when you're looking at what questions should you ask about potential programs, what should you ask professors, current grads, grad faculty. there might be specific questions in your discipline. So I recommend going into a browser and typing in literally, like, let's say you're interested in chemistry graduate school questions to ask, and then see what pops up. What you might find is that the scholarly organizations or professional societies might have suggested resources available, suggested questions. So for example, when I typed that in to Google, the first result was from the American Chemical Society's Student Member Magazine. And it had a list of questions that were specific for chemistry students to ask. Now, when you're asking professors for more information, you want to know a little bit more about, what are they working on? How many grad students are they working with? This is really for PhDs who are thinking about, research long-term, having an advisor, as a dissertation chair, asking them what courses they teach. When they publish with grad students, what does that look like? This is where you can also look at their CV. Are the graduate students first author, second author? How can you tell? Does the faculty member feature graduate students on their personal webpage? What does the professor think about the town, the university, the department overall? Can you get a sense in conversations of what the professor thinks? And then asking, what would you change about, the town, university, department? Again, these are just example questions. I think the best group that you can get information from are the current graduate students. Find a way to talk to them. Even if no one offers that to you, you should definitely ask, the graduate admissions team at an institution or the faculty member you're talking to, can I connect with someone in that program? You could also connect with them, if you get their, you see their information on their website, email them. Most graduate students I know would be more than happy to share their experience with a prospective grad student. So asking them, are there professors you like working with? How do you develop these relationships? Are there professors you should avoid working with? How are grad students funded? What does it take to be successful? What's the culture like? Where do they live? Where do grads live? And what do they do for fun? Within each graduate program, you also have directors and program staff. And so they're the ones that have a lot of information. The graduate program staff are typically the ones that know the most, in my opinion. Graduate program directors often switch every few years. The graduate program staff are more often have been there longer and know more about the big picture of the program. So asking them these questions about how are grads funded, what do they need to do in order to receive funding, asking them what does it take to be successful, what does a timeline look like? They most likely know what forms you need to fill out and when, what courses you need to take and when, what happens if you are struggling to stay on track, and then knowing what kind of support does the program offer in terms of helping grads find a job. So something that I think is important and part of the hidden curriculum, and again, this is coming from me who works with graduate students from a student life perspective, is knowing what is beyond that graduate program. Graduate programs can be very small, they can be very large, but they're not the only support system you have in a college campus. If you're in undergrad currently, you probably know a little bit more about student life or student services, student development. Not every institution has something specific for graduate students, or you might have to dig a little to find it. At larger institutions, there might be a branch off of the graduate school that works with graduate student life, but really knowing that you have this network of support. And so, for example, you have your graduate program staff and faculty, then you have the department, the school, college level staff and faculty. There's typically a graduate education office or the school, student life services, groups and organizations, other campus resources. You're not alone in graduate school, even though it may feel very isolating. There are resources and support available for you. And I'm saying this now, and I want you to remember that when you're in grad school. Okay. So this is a snapshot of some of the resources available at Rensselaer. Again, this is not everyone that's available, but there's different ways in which these departments, areas work with our graduate students. You'll see we have the graduate experience. So I'm a one-person office, but I work really closely with other areas on campus to provide, opportunities, support, advice, resources, advocacy to grads. We have our counseling and health services, the Dean of Students, the Student Union, our international services for students and scholars, our Career Center, we have a Leadership Center. There's a Global Communication plus Design. That's like a writing center, but not just writing, it's all communication projects. There's libraries. Is there an active graduate student council or graduate student union? Are they active? What have they done recently? Can you find out information about them? Is there knowledge within the graduate program about what graduate students can do in terms of leadership outside of that department? Is it encouraged? Is that important to you? And so these are just some of the areas in which you can look at. It's important too, when you're looking at different institutions, knowing dig a little deeper. And that's kind of what I said earlier in terms of like go beyond the website or brochure. You're looking at an entire experience. Yes, you're going there for a graduate program, but what other opportunities do they offer? So then it's a question of, well, how do you build, why do you build a network of mentors, and why do you need so many mentors? Well, in terms of getting through grad school, I really believe that it can't be you alone. It really does take a network of support. So thinking about, how do you build this team? What does that look like? So thinking, who is writing your letters of recommendation currently? How do you stay in touch with them? What are their undergraduate faculty and staff? Are you currently employed in an industry or a job? Who are your champions there? Who can you go to for support? What about your neighbors or community members? Are you involved in organizations? Who can you turn to when you need something from them? There's a very big online community, similar to what I said about Twitter. There's opportunities for mentoring through different organizations, through your professional societies. Your peers can be your mentors. Asking them, more advanced graduate students for that mentorship. Knowing that you can find mentors in your department, outside of your department. The whole point is that you want people to be in your corner, and knowing who can you go to for help. And so there's probably particular people that you'll want when particular things come up. So part of the reason why you have that mentorship is so you can ask for help. So how, knowing what you need, knowing that, especially if you're getting to a place where, you're a PhD student, you're forming, you're working on your, a proposal or an exam, you want to know, who can I go to besides my advisor to ask about, methods and talk about methods? Who can give good advice? Who can help you with that strategic planning? Looking to someone to talk things out. There's a lot of ups and downs in grad school. So looking for someone who can listen, offer advice. Knowing that, going to these mentors to say, I think something's a little wrong about this situation, or I feel like, this person said something, I don't know what to do with that information. If you feel like you've been belittled or dismissed quickly for asking questions, who can you go to your mentors to kind of sort that out, working through setbacks. And really the mentors are there to help you navigate this hidden curriculum. When you're thinking about staying on track, and again, this is early, right? So you're not really there yet, but it's important to keep this in mind when you're when you're entering a graduate program, there's steps to graduation. Where can you find that flow chart? The flow chart is typically found within a student handbook, within a department or a program. Sometimes you can find it in the academic catalog. Your graduate program staff probably know where this is. It's looking at what coursework do you need, what grades do you need for that coursework, what deadlines, milestones do you need to meet in order to progress to the next, within your academic progress, how to go from step to step. Knowing that, what happens if you fall off of that academic progress, those steps? How can you get back on those steps? How do you know, what if things are not going well at all? Can you drop a course? Are there deadlines for adding or dropping courses? What if requirements change? Do they apply to you, or were you grandfathered in to those before the changes were made? You really should go to staff. There are graduate faculty who know this information very well, but I will say that it's hard to keep track of, and there's many other things that faculty are doing. I'm not trying to dismiss them, but they might not be able to keep up with the changes as much as our administrative staff can. They're really, with that said, being respectful and efficient with the staff's time to ask about, what does the flow chart look like? There's a lot of tasks and logistical items that they have to work with. So knowing, being respectful and appreciative of their time. When you're thinking about, the flow chart in what steps you need to take for your milestones, how do your goals align with that? You might not think you need a particular course, or you might not think you need to attend a professional development seminar, but that is designed for you to be able to reach your goals and to be successful. So know that whatever that flow chart looks like, it's there for a purpose. And if for some reason you can argue that you don't need that, then you would take that up with your advisor. There are typically coursework, special coursework assigned. There are programs that have less coursework than other programs. You might want to know, is there room for me to take courses outside of this particular track, what you're asked to do? Are there a minimum number of credits that you have to have in order to be full-time, to have an assistantship? These are things that you want to know. Grades, they matter and they don't matter. There's an expectation that you should get good grades in grad school. But if you're struggling, you have to ask for help. Knowing that if you didn't do so well on an assignment or in a class, how can you improve that? How can you have those conversations with your faculty to ask about, how do you improve? The biggest thing to just know is grad school is hard. If you're struggling in a course and it's impacting your overall well-being, you need to seek out help. Don't let grades be a signal of whether you belong in grad school or not. There might be something else going on that you need to work out. Making a plan as early as possible, really, for mapping out your assignments and deadlines through a semester is really important. You might find flexibility, especially when it comes to deadlines, but be careful with that. You might have an exam and an assignment due the same week. You might get an extension on one, but then how does that add up in the long run? Sometimes it can be really new in grad school to have so much unstructured time. It can be good and bad. You can manage your time to be as productive as you want, to be given the time in knowing how to spend it. But don't take this for granted. You have many things that you should be doing, not just academic stuff. So really scheduling everything in from, laundry to cleaning, cooking, sleep, exercise, connecting with friends and family. The less structure, it might be a challenge. You might find yourself using more time on easier tasks and less on difficult tasks. And so knowing that that can be really overwhelming and stressful. And so really knowing that going in and really scheduling everything will help you. And thinking more about, self-care and reflecting on why you are in grad school. Again, I mentioned, your personal statements and what you're working on in terms of why you want to go to grad school. It's good to reflect back on that, and your goals may change, throughout, but keep a journal, keep some sort of documentation to that you can reflect on when things get tough, because things will probably get tough. What does it look like if you were to write your future self a letter? What would you say to yourself after your after your first year of grad school? Knowing that that's just as important, taking time to reflect on why you're there, it's just as important as finishing an assignment. So every so often, it's you really need to do the reflection piece. So self-care, some of you may know that depression and anxiety are real in graduate school. There's research that shows that mental health issues are higher in graduate school than the rest of the population. It's definitely, you're definitely not weak if you ask for help. Graduate students find it helpful to talk with our counseling staff, seeking out a therapist, whether it's on campus or off campus. Really don't minimize the eating, the sleeping, exercising, relaxing. All of that matters to your success. And then, just communication in terms of, to stay on track with your goals and milestones, you have to know when to ask for help and communicate with those who know more when you don't know what to ask. It's okay not to know everything. You want to be able to reach out when you're unsure. If you are questioning something, someone else is probably questioning something too. Which takes us really into the academic jargon. So just briefly, I wanted to, there's a lot of jargon when it comes to academia, and some of you may know some of these, some of you may not. There's abbreviations and acronyms for everything. For example, our career center is called CCPD. Well, that's the Center for Career and Professional Development. PLS is the Professional Leadership Series. There's many abbreviations, acronyms, and sometimes they're not shared. R1, R&R, ABD, TAs, RAs, IRB, IACUC, PI, RFP. There's so many of them. And, academic terms, master's, doctorate, there's different types of exams. Some disciplines have preliminary exams, comprehensive exams, qualifying, oral exams, the dissertation, thesis, proposals, protocol, defense, committee, ranks and titles. So you have your undergrads, your grads, your postdocs, your adjunct faculty, tenure track, visiting assistant professors, lecturers, assistant professors, associate professors, full professors, administration, dean, provost, staff. There's so many. Then you have the disciplinary names and theories that are within your discipline. You have buzzwords that are popular within your discipline. And then you have words that just sound smart, pedagogy, epistemology. It's okay not to know what all of that means. Asking the meaning of something is really the way to go, because when you tell yourself, I don't know what that means, you start to feel like, well, if I don't know what that means, then maybe I don't belong here. And that's just not true. Academia has a lot of jargon, and it's okay to ask for questions. Ask what these things mean, because more likely than not, other people have the same questions. Okay, I just talked way too much, so I want to be able to open this up for questions, and I'm trying to find where I put all of your faces. Don't mind me. I don't know where your faces are. Are there questions? I can't see the chat right now.
You can, Colleen, if you want, you can either stop sharing your screen and then you'll be able to see everybody.
Oh, there we go.
Yep,
Okay,
there you
great.
go. Yeah.
Okay, so I did a lot of talky, way too much. What questions do you have?
And I think if you're okay with it, Colleen, we like somebody can mute or unmute their microphone and,
Oh yeah,
and
of course.
speak.
Yep,
Okay. Yeah.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. So what I find is that you might not know what questions to ask because you might not know. I had a meeting with a graduate student recently who knew he was struggling. He was referred to me from our counseling office. He had some questions about, his GPA. He wanted to know a little bit more about, will he have a TA position next semester? And he came out and said, I just don't know what questions to ask. I don't know what I'm supposed to be saying. Oh, good question. Okay. Do I need to get a supervisor before applying? Okay, prospective masters. So a lot of that depends on the program. Most master's programs, you do not need to get a supervisor before applying. There are, and jump into Mary Kay and Jared if you have anything to add. Here, I don't believe, what program are you looking at? Henry, if you don't mind. Like I will say, like our Lally School of Business, typically you don't need a supervisor. If you're going for a master's program in more of a research specific program, oh, okay, so engineering, yeah, you might find someone you're interested in working in, but you don't have to. There's some disciplines that really recommend that you have someone that you're interested in working with, but it's not all of our disciplines. And even in the same discipline, you might have some people like biomedical engineering, for example. Some graduate students come in knowing exactly who they want to work with. And other times they come in and they have no idea. And so they take time getting to know people. Then you have some of our sciences where rotations are common. You're not assigned an advisor, but you go to like 3 different labs throughout your first year or first semester to figure out which lab is your best fit. And then it's, depending on the discipline, there might be a ranking system where you rank professors you want to work with, and so do the professors. You do not need a supervisor for geotechnical engineering, but you can always ask the graduate program director or staff.
Wait,
Okay.
Colleen, can I just add one more thing
please,
to that? So
please.
To kind of go off of that, one of our not economics, electrical engineering professors actually was talking about contacting professors and what that should look like. So what he recommended was that if you decide to contact a professor, to make sure you do your research beforehand. So if a student emails them and they're like, hey, my name is Mary Kate Scardillo, tell me about your research, it's going to go right into the trash box. But if you email the professor and you have done your research, so you can ask engaging, thought-provoking questions and engage in a conversation, it looks better and it's a better way to interact with the professor. So that's just something to keep in mind. Professor Dutta recommended using Google Scholar as a really great resource, but that's something to think about when you're contacting them.
Yep. Yeah, and again, I don't mean to sell this book, but there are example template letters in here, that can help with, finding an advisor and asking for letters of recommendation. All right, I'm going back here for, should I be applying for PhD if I'm indecisive about it and need the funding? That's a tough question. I would say most PhD programs in STEM, with some exceptions, will aim to fund you. Now, there might be partial funding. There might be encouragement that you find external funding, but part of you going into a PhD program and getting accepted to one is that there's an investment in you as a PhD student. And so being indecisive, I mean, it's okay to be indecisive, but you might want to, before you accept, it's okay to go through the whole process of being accepted and say, you know what, I'm not ready for this, or I need to defer this. That's my personal belief. You may also find that, and this happens, you start a PhD program, you're like, you know what, this isn't what I expected. And sometimes you might hear the word master out. Well, I don't really think you're mastering out. You still are accomplishing a degree. You are still, an alum of that institution. And so you have a credential that not a lot of people have. And so there's nothing wrong with, taking a turn and going for the master's. So again, I think having honest conversations with, current faculty members who will write your letters of recommendation about what if I'm indecisive, I think is a good thing. Do you offer TA GA for prospective master's students? If yes, do we apply for it separately? Okay. So we don't have anything called a GA here, which is just a general grad assistantship. We really only have teaching assistantships and research assistantships at RPI. I would say that there are some assistantships for master's students, but they're limited. Our business students, there might be a couple that have assistantships, but and the same in engineering. Depending on what your expertise is, like we typically need computer science TAs all the time. We need math, physics. So if there's the priority at Rensselaer will always go to PhD students, to be honest. But it's a good question to ask in terms of, is there funding for master's students? Also, depending on the program, there might be awards or partial funding again for the master's program. So these are good questions to ask. Don't be shy about asking about funding. Really don't. What do we got here? I'm interested in the biomedical engineering PhD. Okay, yeah. So you're gonna want to, Marissa, you're gonna want to talk to them. You're gonna want to talk to biomedical engineering. You're gonna want to show your, and you can do this before applying. This is the courses I've taken. This is my interest area. What do I need? What's missing? There might be some, are there anyone in this program who's done something similar? How can you connect, what is your interest in from chemistry to biomedical engineering? How do you make that connection yourself? If you can show them, like, this is what I'm bringing to biomedical engineering, that helps. I think talking to more people about that is really, important. Looking at what prerequisites are there for biomedical engineering, and does it look like you'll need more time to take all of those prerequisites, or do you have enough knowledge to kind of go in knowing what you have? Yeah, good question. So if you're accepted for a PhD program, are you allowed to defer it for a year if needed? Mary Kate and Jared, I'm going to turn that one to you, but I'm pretty sure you can, but I'm not 100% sure.
So for this past fall, we did make an exception because of COVID-19, but typically we do not allow students to defer for a year. So if you decide you want to attend at a later date, you'll need to reapply. And we do that just because of consistency and fairness, so that your application is evaluated and read with the most current application pool. So yeah, you would have to reapply. But great question.
Great question, yes. Is it common for PhD students to master out? I don't know if common is the right word. I mean, it definitely happens. I really, again, it goes back to like what are your goals? What do you want to achieve professionally and career-wise? My best advice is I would want it to be your choice. to leave with a master's. And so if you were feeling like you were being kind of forced to go master out, ask why, ask for feedback. You know, if all of a sudden you are told like, you know, you don't have what it takes, I would ask for help. I would go to those other resources and say, hey, this doesn't feel right. You know, there are, you know, at Rensselaer, at least there are specific forms, like we have a doctoral student yearly review. It's important to take those type of things like reviews, individual development plans, depending on the institute, take them seriously, because if you're in a position where, you know, your faculty member is saying you're making excellent academic progress, but then you're feeling like you should leave with a master's, what's going on? So it's important to ask those questions. I'm interested in the chemical engineering program. Just wanted you who admit students. Again, this one's probably for Mary Kate and Jarrett. As far as I know, programs do not accept on a rolling basis. There's
Correct.
typically, yeah.
Yes.
There's a deadline that you will be notified by that is common for all. I think it's like the Council of Graduate Schools. So this national organization says April 15th? April 15th, the decisions have to go out. At least for I know that for like the prior to the next fall semester.
Yes.
So, and there's deadlines, you know, for, so what's the deadline for next fall? Probably coming up in January, right?
Yep. So our deadline is January 1st, and then it varies by department how long it takes to get back.
Yep.
And like you said, April 15th, also for international students, that gives
Yep.
them enough time to get their international documents and all of that.
Yep. That's excellent. So asking about applying for PhD in aerospace engineering, would like to know how to acquire full funding. So again, aerospace engineering PhD programs, Rensselaer PhD programs, we have the way that our funding works at Rensselaer, and again, this is not every institution, is that you're either fully funded for a PhD or not at all. Now there's a middle ground in there that we're not even going to get into, but when RPI commits to a graduate student, and as long as you're making adequate academic progress, you will be funded. Now, will that change in the future? I don't know. That's how it is right now. I say that because, you know, COVID-19 has disrupted a lot of normalcy when it comes to higher education. But it's important to know that, you know, those are questions to ask current graduate students. How did you get your assistantships? What did you have to do? You know, how many semesters did you have to be a teaching assistantship? How do I move from a teaching assistantship to a research assistantship? You know, when you're asking a graduate program, looking specifically at their, you know, their graduate program handbooks, which might not be something you think about, but looking at those, reviewing those, you might find more information about funding, what graduate students need to maintain their funding. So I have ADHD. I'm aware that graduate students will be more work. What we're supposed to, yes, great. So I also have ADHD, and I actually didn't know I had it until I was in a doctorate program. So I was 29 years old when I learned that I had ADHD. Full disclosure. So we do have disability support services that works with our graduate students. So depending on, so coursework, and you know, it's a little bit easier. It's similar to undergrad, where you have maybe extended time on exams. Typically, there's not extensions on assignments because they add up, and then it's hard to catch up. You know, we do have our counseling services working on different strategies. You know, what part, you know, what kind of ADHD do you have in terms of what might work for you? When you're working with a faculty member, you want a faculty member who, you know, especially when you get into your thesis dissertation, like, do they understand your needs? Can you be flexible? Can they be flexible with you? What has worked in the past for, you know, whether it's ADHD or any, you know, learning disability, how can you translate that into a graduate program? And specifically, if you're interested in connecting with, disability services at Rensselaer, I can connect you. So just shoot me an email. How competitive is it to be admitted to Rensselaer? I would say it's probably pretty competitive, but I don't see all the applications that Mary Kate and Jarrett see. I will say in terms of selectivity, our graduate programs are small, especially for PhD programs. You might not, and again, it depends on the discipline, right? So some of our, like our mechanical engineering probably has the most PhD students because the most faculty are here. Do you want to comment on that, Mary Kate or Jarrett, in terms of?
Yeah, I was actually just trying to find my notes about, so for electrical engineering, the professor was saying this the other day. We say there's like 300 on an average academic semester, there's about 375 applicants, and they admit about 10% of those. So again, that electrical engineering is one of our larger programs, but that is sort of the range. And we're very lucky where we have a strong student applicant pool to who chooses RPI.
Yeah, but don't let that prevent you from applying.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And I think too, to kind of go off of that as well, we look at the application and our departments look at the application holistically, right? So if you're sitting there saying, okay, well, my GRE scores are not the best, one, you have enough time to retake them, study again and retake them if you choose. The other thing is that our departments look at the holistic application. So we don't have a firm, GRE score or GPA restriction. So we want to see the entire student, and that we're having students that are coming to Rensselaer that are well-rounded, well-experienced, along with a good academic, course load.
Yeah, excellent. So are there department-specific webinars planned for the near future? That's a good question. So in terms of mechanical engineering and a master's of engineering and mechanical engineering, so I don't know if they post through grad admissions or not. This they do? Okay, great.
Yes, so I'm putting a link right in our chat box. So this will bring you to all of the different kinds of events that we have. All of them this year, because of COVID, are virtual. But you can sign up for a meeting with Jarrett or I, where it's a one-on-one Zoom call, where we can answer specific questions. You can attend one of our graduate fairs, one of our webinars. We do actually have a general info session, an application workshop on Thursday. So we would love to see any and all of you there. But yes, so that link will give you pretty much all of the information you need in terms of events coming up.
Great. This one's for you both, Mary Kate and Jarrett. Can I ask to reopen my previous application since I didn't submit my GRE on time? That might be.
Yeah, I think it would depend. We'd have to look at your file. So I would say either contact Jarrett or I, whomever is your corresponding school, and we can talk with you further. It's a great question, and we want to answer that, but it's sort of case specific.
Yeah. So I've heard professors getting angry and blacklisting countries or institutes for mastering out, or in some cases even end up not even issuing the master's degree. I'm not sure. I have not heard that.
Me neither.
I'd probably have to get into a little bit more of what of that question. I'm also going to put my email down here just so you have it, and then if you want to follow up with that. I mean, one thing, again, when you're looking at programs, sometimes you can get a sense. I mean, sometimes there are profiles of graduate students that might list where their undergrad was from. Talking with your peers, that have gone to graduate programs, where have they gone? You want to be comfortable in your environment. That seems discriminatory in terms of blacklisting. So I'd ask you to follow up with me. Okay, should we answer yes, the financial support questionnaire in the RPI application if we hope to obtain a graduate fellowship award or teaching, research assistantship, or just this question for other funding opportunities? I would check yes. Check yes. Always check yes for funding. There are some graduate students do take out, even if they have an assistantship, they do take out additional, if they're, especially if they're domestic US citizens and they have access to federal aid, they may take out more money to help support cost of living. For our assistantships, we do a cost of living analysis to make sure that, again, you're not paid millions of dollars to be a graduate student, but there's enough for you to survive, hopefully. Again, it gets more complicated when there's dependents and spouses, but you know, I would always check yes. Okay, so applying to the GEM fellowship would be a good one. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So I saw a little bit earlier. Did we miss the deadline? That comes up every year, and so I do believe that you can receive a GEM fellowship in your second year of a graduate program, third year of a graduate program. We do have one dedicated person in our Office of Graduate Education who works with graduate students on external funding applications and searching for funding, applying for funding. There's nothing wrong with coming into a PhD program or a master's program with your own funding. There's something great about flexibility in terms of, you know, especially some of these, like if you're looking at, you know, if you're a domestic US citizen, you're looking at like the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program fellowship, like that's a really prestigious one. You know, if you're interested in talking to grads who have received that award, you definitely can. If you're an undergrad right now, go to, you know, whether it's the Career Center or maybe the Writing Center. Do they have examples of fellowship applications that you can look at? Does RPI have a plan for the pandemic upon the coming fall? Great question. I will say, as of right now, fall is too far away. We have pretty, our leadership, the president of the Institute, the cabinet, the people who make the big decisions are very aware of how the pandemic impacts our institution. RPI was one of the first institutions, at least in the Northeast, to go completely remote. When I say completely remote, this is back in the spring. We have been going semester to semester. As of right now, we don't have all of the information for spring 2021 because it's still fluid, right? We don't know what's going to happen. You know, in the US, we're definitely seeing an increase in cases. And so all of that plays a role in, you know, what the future looks like. But we do have a COVID website. I don't know if we can, if either of you can find, Jarrett or Mary Kay, if you want to find that and post it. But there's a lot of good information there. Okay. So, yep, okay. Jem, to clarify, GRE score submissions is optional for fall 2021, correct? Yes, optional. Correct. Awesome. Are there any more questions? And it's okay. Oh, yeah, good. Can you give more info about Lally School's info sessions? Is there any of your colleagues available to help me about PhD programs at Lally? Okay, so you're looking specifically at the management PhD program. Mary Kay, Jarrett?
Yep, so we'll give you, I will put that email address in our chat box and you can reach out to them directly. So the Lally PhD is in a different, that's with the department directly. Oh yeah, Jarrett just put it in there, great. That's a different department than admissions because they work specifically with the PhD applicants. So Lally PhD at rpi.edu is going to be your best resource.
Yep, Absolutely. Like I said, you know, hopefully you gathered something from, you know, what I was able to share. You know, I prefer discussion based, but, you know, given the virtual world we live in, you know, I shared a lot, but do not hesitate to reach out. smithc15@rpi.edu. If I don't know the answer, I can refer you to someone who might. But thank you so much for attending today, and good luck with your applications. And I hope that you find a program that fits for you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.